Hello, my name's Andrew Nelson. I've got a small business called Nelson Harvesting. We build and operate machines for the harvesting of tree crops, specifically olives and citrus crops. I'm from a nut growing background. I spent 20 years growing walnuts and almonds, so I feel comfortable working in orchards. It's been doing it since I was a 19-year-old, spent a year in California. I'm in Leeton in New South Wales, standing in an orchard of young trees that were planted in 2006. They had a dwarf virus inserted into them in 2008. Their variety's Hamlin. The tree spacings are 5 metres between the rows and 2 metres between the trees. It's a combination that works very well for machine harvesting. On my left-hand side you can see trees that haven't been harvested, and on the right-hand side trees that were harvested yesterday. We'd like the trees skirted up 600 millimetres from the ground, both for big limbs and the low-hanging fruit-carrying wood, just so it produces the best result. Trees up to perhaps 2.5 metres height work well for us. Beyond that, the crop loads are so heavy that everything tends to bog down a bit. What you're looking at coming towards you is the harvester. It's pulled with a tractor, a bit the same as a PTO-driven grape harvester. We just think tractor manufacturers can do all the really hard stuff, which leaves us to do the picking mechanism, the cleaning and the delivery systems. Yeah, I think it works well for a small business like us to not get involved in the technical side of transmissions and things like that. The harvester travels down the road in a straight line, but once it is in an orchard, the harvester slews off to the right-hand side, as you'd expect with a grape harvester. In some ways there's a lot of similarities with a grape harvester. There's a picking mechanism based on fiberglass rods, which in our case is far more sophisticated than a grape harvester. The rest of it is a big version of a grape harvester. There's floors that bring the fruit to the back of the harvester, what we call the mini conveyors, transferring fruit out to the sides, and then bucket conveyors. Across the top of the harvester there's the cross conveyor. There are cleaning fans that we've built slightly bigger than grape harvester ones. The whole machine is driven with the oil supply from the tractor, which in fence case can be very accurately controlled, and also a bank of pumps driven off the PTO. There are 7 hydraulic pumps, 6 or 8 cylinders and 6 or 8 hydraulic motors in the system. I'm uncomfortable with computers and PLCs in agricultural machinery, so it's a very simple machine. There are gear pumps, solenoids, roller motors, a few gear motors. Every effort's been made to keep it easily maintained by agricultural staff. I'm the primary designer, engineer, and depending on workload I'm also the boiler maker, the spray painter, the hydraulic fitter. I've been assisted by some very clever blokes over the years, but primarily it's my work that's got it to the point that we're at. These trees we're looking at now have been harvested for the 4th time mechanically. Right from day one, when there was only half a dozen oranges on the tree, they've been picked. It works well. Our aim's to cut hand labour out and cut the production costs for growers, whether they're Australian growers or someone overseas. Labour costs are always a problem, and labour availability is often a problem. Depending on the success of the grower in skirting his trees, we can get upwards of 95, probably even 98% of the fruit off. If the trees haven't been adequately skirted, it can drop significantly. We were running at 2.5 or 3 tonnes an hour in olives, which wasn't enough for the citrus. We're now good for between 6 and 6.5 tonnes an hour of oranges. You can see this in the footage running at the moment. Yeah, I'm not old or dead yet. I think we're probably good for 10 tonnes an hour with some more refinement. It's an expensive business. Even a small business operating on a shoestring, I still spend several $100,000 a year developing this machine. And we've got to find the money somewhere. We've received some help from a body called Horticulture Australia Limited. They provided us with 2 small grants, which was helpful and gratefully received. Beyond that, we've financed it ourselves. Yeah, the Australian industry developed around Leeton, and to a large degree is still centred around Leeton in the MIA area of Western New South Wales. It's one great location to grow citrus trees. Further north, 400 kilometres north, the cotton industry is a big successful industry, very accustomed to using machinery for everything. There are 5 or 6 large cotton farmers up there who have planted substantial plantings of these things, and the industry is now really going to have 2 centres. There'll be this Leeton Centre and further north call it the Moree Centre. Those guys have got no intention of using hand labour. There's all sorts of reasons why. Everyone knows them. It's difficult to get the labour. It's reluctant to work in wet weather, and no one blames them. This machine has requirements. It's best suited to plantings that were intended to be mechanically harvested right from the start. The Australian industry, the more progressive growers, are now growing a combination of 5 varieties: Hamlin, Salustiana, Parsons Brown, Pineapple, and a variety called McMahon, which is an Australian selection, soon to be available, and it's passed its preliminary tests, is a Chinese variety called Bing Cheng Teng. So there'll be 6 varieties which cover a 4.5 month harvesting window. We've done trials successfully on common Valencias, which would generally be considered unsuitable for machine harvesting because the second crop is on the tree, but we've just proven with surveys done by the Department of Agriculture that if we harvest in late November up to mid-December, a 3-week window, we can successfully remove the fruit without interfering with the small fruit. We like it to be about the size of a marble, a large marble. Otherwise we will knock it off and the grower suffers the penalty in his yields next year. The growers of these new varieties are expecting yields of 55 tonnes a hectare. We haven't worked in yields quite that high yet because the trees are still young, but we have worked in 40 tonnes a hectare quite successfully. It's a lot of yield per hectare. Getting the fruit off the harvester and into semi-trailers is another exercise. It's an easier exercise from a designing point of view, but there's still machinery involved. Generally these orchards are planted on 2 width spacings. The Leeton growers tend to be on 5 metre row centres. The cotton guys further north are on 7 metres. Depending where we're working, we would use these trailers on the wide spacings. For these close plantings behind us, the 5 metre row centres, we use these trailers here. They're both side tippers, they both work well. We like 13, 14 metres of headland at the end of the row. We prefer long rows. They're 600 metres long here, which is perfect. Even longer would be better. Ground that's not undulating, obviously. It's a large machine and it's quite mobile. It's surprisingly mobile, but it is still a large machine, and we have trouble where boundary fences are too close or there's irrigation channels. The cotton guys up north are well aware of all those things, so they've allowed plenty of room. And I think in time the Leeton industry, as old blocks are pushed out and new trees are planted, I'm quite convinced this is the way of the future. Machine picking on orchards designed for machine picking. It might be 15 years' time before the complete transformation of the Australian citrus industry takes place, but I'm quite sure it'll go down this path. It gives the option, or gives growers the option of either mechanically harvesting and sending fruit to the juice industries, which is what we're in the business of, or picking the fruit by hand and sending it to the packing sheds. You know, some varieties are suitable for both things. It's the dawn of a new era, I think. It's 40 years behind the grape industry, but I think we can learn a lot of lessons from them and catch up quite quickly.